The train station served as an outlet. It's a medium of exchange for social movement. Folk would have an opportunity to gather, have visitation.
It needs to be known. For if you do not know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. People need to know what happened and to vow in their hearts, their spirits, and in their actions that it will never happen again.
The Texas and Pacific Railway Depot has been standing as a reminder of African American history in Natchitoches for nearly a century. And after over 3 decades of use, the depot has sat neglected, vandalized, and abused since its doors closed to passengers in the 1960s. In December 1887, the Natchitoches Railway Company launched the first rail service in the region, known locally as the Tap Line, connecting Natchitoches to Cypress along a 12-mile route. This move represented a significant shift from riverboat transportation to rail. Initially, the Texas and Pacific Line bypassed Natchitoches, but local businessmen intervened, forming a new joint stock company to construct the Tap Line and ensure the town's rail access. Architect F.G. Shaw of Dallas, Texas, was then tasked with designing the depot, opting for a Spanish-style influence. Shaw's design featured beams and windows and chandeliers mirroring the sword hilt of Natchitoches' founder, Saint Denis, was completed in 6 months at a cost of $100,000. The depot finished construction and was dedicated on June 20, 1927 by Natchitoches Chamber of Commerce, solidifying Natchitoches' integration into the Texas and Pacific Railway's main line.
Going to New Orleans, to me, that was the only method of going for us. We didn't have a car for our parents to take us, drive us down to New Orleans.
This was a main way of getting from one place to another in that distance especially.
We would have to catch the train in order to go to New Orleans around 11 o'clock at night. My mother had fried chicken, baked cake, and all of this at the house, and she had prepared our clothes. We thought we were really coming from somewhere when we left this train station.
Wherever that train went could create a town. That was a given. It's an important story in transportation. It's an important story in the story of civil rights.
And this was because the station was built in the height of the Jim Crow era.
During the time that the station was operating, in particular the mid to late 60s, there was a strong movement of segregation in America, and certainly here in the Deep South in Louisiana.
The river divides the town, Cane River. West side was mostly over here on Jackson Square was black folks. East Natchitoches mostly was white. You had several sections should I say up where City Bank is, you had a few blacks living in that area. But the other part of East Natchitoches, it was whites.
It's an interesting point when you look at the building, the ornateness of the loggia, of the entrance to the white waiting room. It's beautiful arched entryways and the twin towers on both sides of it with the tile roofs. And then of course the other side is much more downplayed, and it had a very simple canopy over it, a very simple entrance.
I remember there were whites on one side, but we didn't really see them. I just knew that they were over there. Maybe I saw through a window when we purchased our ticket. But to see whites in this area, there were not a lot for us to see because we were separated.
The white side was better kept, had more space. I even think the fountains were different then, with colder water being on the other side. There were larger restrooms. And I think that sometimes there might have been even a larger number of black people trying to go and come from this transportation hub. And they had to stand and endure with crowded situations because it was smaller. And you couldn't just go over to the other side. Maybe no one was there, just a few people over on the other side, the white side. And I think that was very unfair.
At the heart of World War II, the train station stood as a pivotal player, a silent witness to the unfolding drama that shaped the course of history.
During World War II, the train station served as there again a key concept for transportation. It would be a sense of passengers coming to the Natchitoches area for various reasons.
And it was soldiers coming from the war, risking their life and limb, and some having made the ultimate sacrifice, and their bodies coming back to this train station. And even then, Black people were not put on the same social level as customers, paying customers in this transportation hub. A large number of families tearfully greeted their casketed soldiers coming from United States war grounds.
It took the boys away, and sometimes it brought them home in a casket.
African American passengers fought hard for civil rights efforts, mailing letters to the NAACP out on the midnight train to voice their concerns of human mistreatment. And while the fight for equal treatment continued, each passenger had their own unique experiences with the depot.
So Natchitoches, everybody thinks, is Front Street and the brick streets and the Cane River Lake and that kind of thing, and it is. But it's also all the things that took place on the train tracks. And I've talked to people that remember vividly that was how they traveled on vacations and everywhere else. In fact, a lady told me not too long ago that their family traveled by train almost exclusively because even with the Green Book, there were still a lot of safety issues for African Americans driving places where they always felt safe in trains and in train stations. And so, you take a majority African American population in a city like Natchitoches, that's a big part of their history.
And when I was in 6th grade, I took my first train ride right here from Natchitoches going to what you call Cypress, Louisiana. My teacher was Mr. Himes Baptiste. He carried the whole class. And one thing I noticed on the train, they had porters on there. They worked on the train. They wore white uniforms, these big white caps. Also, I know they were doing some cooking on the train.
Mr. Lance Rebel, he was an agent here. This is where he conducted all the trains that came in. He could see them either way, going down, coming or going this track here, and check all the cars coming by for hot spots, hot wheels and stuff smoking. He'd check them out right here.
It has a unique Italianate architectural style, which was popular in the 19th century and inspired by 16th century buildings in the Italian Renaissance. This was unusual for the area that was known for cottages and Creole architecture.
The designer, the architect's known and worked for the Texas and Pacific Railroad Company. And he tried to design the interior of the main white waiting room as the Santa Maria, Columbus's ship. And then even features of that tried to harken back to Natchitoches history.
What really stood out was the beautiful wooden pews or benches. They were dark, they were mahogany, and just gorgeous and so shiny. And the floor was shiny and clean. It was just a beautiful place.
After serving countless passengers over the years, the train made its last stop to the Natchitoches Depot in the 1960s, marking the end of an era.
There's so much about the city. Of course, people think about the riverbank, you think about the food, you think about our great sports history. The people of Natchitoches really make Natchitoches what it is. There's a hospitality, there's a sense of community that's here that you might not necessarily experience in other places, in other cities, but we certainly have that community spirit, community mindedness here. That is really one of the greatest things about Natchitoches.
For decades, the community of Natchitoches has made numerous attempts to preserve and rehabilitate the depot. While many of these efforts were fruitless, the city was able to clean and board up the depot in the early 2000s. In 2003 and 2004, the city was approved for 2 grants, and they were in line for funding in 2005 when Hurricane Katrina swept through New Orleans.
There's an effort to really try to revitalize the west side of the city, which is this, of course, side of Natchitoches. The mayor, our new mayor, Mayor Ronnie Williams Jr., is really working on trying to bring about a sense of involvement that would have an economic impact, as well as a sense of pride for the community at large.
For many years, the community have been really wanting this to be turned into a museum. The community feels that our story should be told, and it's been closed for so many years. And we feel that the education system, the railroad system should be told, and our story for the black folks should be told, because a lot of our young people now don't know the story. They don't know how far we've come.
You knew how limited you were in terms of not having freedom of movement. And it also was the forbidding of your crossing certain racial lines. Even though you were coming for the same service, paying the same rate, waiting the same amount of time for the train to come or go. And it made people feel less than first class than their white counterpart, because they had to endure these conditions no matter how crowded it was, no matter how the weather was. Then you just had to put up with it. There's nothing you could do about it, being ill-treated. We should never forget that and vow never to repeat it.
In 2012, the city was able to repair the roof and terracotta tiles, as well as some of the doors and windows were rebuilt. The building was then boarded up for a second time until further funding could be secured.
We need other spaces that are educational opportunities outside of the classroom. And so this depot represents that.
Finally, after a long and difficult journey, the National Park Service, working with the City of Natchitoches and the Cane River National Heritage Area, was finally able to break ground in the beginning stages of rehabilitating the building into the Visitor Center and the administrative offices for the Cane River Creole National Historical Park.
Today is the official groundbreaking of the Depot project, and I am ecstatic to be here.
To see it finally actually happening, we have a construction contract and we're pretty excited. Everybody in our firm's excited.
This is the original ceiling. We've got original wood beams and the original plaster.
It's a celebration. It's a culmination of over 4 decades of work, of community members working in partnership together.
And when Carrie arrived in Natchitoches in 2017, she was on a mission to find a space for the park's headquarters that provided more interaction with the public and allowed for opportunities to connect with visitors from the city of Natchitoches and bring them downriver, and for a way to tell the complete story of life along Cane River.
And a major chapter of that story was civil rights leader Ben D. Johnson, who was a successful, self-made businessman that represented one of the largest minority-owned enterprises in the state of Louisiana. Today, community leader and Johnson's niece, Claire Primus, honors her uncle by carrying on his legacy that inspired many.
We stand on the threshold of a beginning, a fruition of a dream that he was a part of, a vision to enhance West Natchitoches, along with the rightful designation and resurrection of the Texas and Pacific Train Depot. We are proud that we are transitioning and transforming West Natchitoches with the renovation of this depot. My uncle was an ultimate visionary. He did not have formal education, but he did have knowledge, and tons of it, and life skills. And he would rejoice in the accomplishment today. He would say, "Well done, Natchitoches, my hometown that I loved, and I tried to serve until God called me home. Well done indeed."
Getting to this point has been no easy feat. It took a lot of conversations, a lot of planning, and a lot of persistence. We are honored to be able to tell the difficult story of slavery to segregation to civil rights within the walls of the depot, where we can tell all stories of all people of Natchitoches.
The National Park Service, the Cane River National Heritage Area, and the architecture firm Taylor Kimkes have worked tirelessly for nearly a decade to bring this project to life. Since its inception in 1927, the Texas and Pacific Railway Depot has impacted the city of Natchitoches in ways that will mark the pages of history forever.
He's a friend and a future-thinking facilitator. How can I better introduce the Honorable Lieutenant Governor Billy Nungesser, whom we all know.
This is just another great recognition of those incredible times, the heroes that stood up during the civil rights movement, but also what it means to this community. We're going to capture these moments in history that will live on for generations to educate future generations on all the heroes that stood up during that incredible time here in Louisiana.
I'm very excited to know that we have this kind of involvement in Natchitoches, this kind of history in Natchitoches. There's a piece of great history everywhere throughout the state, throughout the country, but I don't believe after having traveled around the country that there's history like we have here in Natchitoches. And this facility has so much history from the north end of it to the southern end, and not to mention the east and the west, but in particular the north and south, because that's the common route for the train to travel.
On Tuesday, September 19th, 2023, Louisiana's 13th Civil Rights Marker was unveiled in front of the Texas and Pacific Railway Depot. It serves as both a marker for Louisiana's civil rights history and an opportunity to spur interest and excitement in the state. The city, the National Park Service, and the Cane River National Heritage Area partnered together to give the street in front of the train depot a real name.
It goes by Depot Street, it goes by 7th Street. It doesn't truly have an address. We sent out this essay contest to the schools, and it was open to middle school and high school, and we got about 25 applicants' essays back. And then we sent those essays to a panel of African American community leaders who evaluated them and then voted for their winner. And the winner was Remembrance Way.
What inspired me is how the people worked so hard to get what they have today. Me, in their hard times, their happy times, and sad times, and sacrifice was for everything that happened.
Maybe a dream deferred, but it's not a dream denied. And there's so many people here today who worked on, who imagined what we are doing today. And to finally say it's here is just, it lets you know that, hey, dreams do become reality.
I see people who are black, who are in positions I never expected them to be in. I see people who are black living in neighborhoods I never expected them to live in. I see people who are black starting businesses and being a part of decision-making bodies such as school boards, city councils, and I believe that is a hopeful horizon